The great chamber of the Galactic Council stretched before them like a massive bowl, carved from pure white stone. 847 different species filled the seats that rose in circles around the central floor. Commander Daeho Kim stood with his small human team in the defendants area, watching as beings of every shape and size stared down at them with expressions ranging from disgust to pity. The air tasted metallic through his breathing mask. Most species here breathed different gases, so the chamber held a mix that satisfied no one completely. Daeho found this fitting. Nothing about today would satisfy anyone. Dr. So-Young Park stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back in the formal pose she used when nervous. Admiral Jin-Woo Lee completed their trio, his weathered face showing no emotion as hundreds of alien eyes studied them like specimens in a lab. "The human delegation will face judgment," announced the speaker, a tall being whose skin shifted colors with each word. The translation device in Daeho's ear turned the alien speech into perfect Korean, though it could not capture the cold tone that needed no translation. The Althari ambassador rose from the accuser's platform. The Althari looked almost human except for their silver skin and eyes that held no warmth. They had been among the first to call for human expulsion from galactic society. "Honored Council," the ambassador began, his voice carrying across the chamber without need for amplification. "For 50 years we have watched the species called humanity spread through our galaxy like a plague. They multiply without control. They fight instead of negotiate. They build weapons we have banned for good reason." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Daeho noticed how quickly other species nodded. They had made up their minds long before this trial began. "The humans," the ambassador continued, "have established colonies on 47 worlds without proper approval. They have increased their military fleet by 300% in 5 years. They refuse to limit their population growth despite clear galactic guidelines." Dr. So-Young stepped forward. "We followed all colonization laws," she said clearly. "Every world we settled was uninhabited and outside claimed territories." "You settled too quickly," snapped a representative from the insect-like Vorthak. "Proper colonization takes centuries of careful planning. You spread like weeds." "We are efficient," Admiral Jinwoo said simply. This brought angry chittering from several species. The word efficient was considered rude in galactic society. Civilized beings took time with decisions. They formed committees. They studied problems for decades before acting. The Althari ambassador smiled, showing teeth that gleamed like metal. "This proves our point exactly. Humans do not understand civilized behavior. They act first and think later. They are dangerous." "We have committed no crimes," Daeho said, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had commanded ships in deep space. "We have broken no laws." "You have broken the greatest law of all," replied the ambassador, "the law of harmony. Galactic civilization works because we move slowly. We think carefully. We avoid conflict through patience and wisdom." He gestured toward the humans. "You bring chaos wherever you go." The speaker called for the evidence to be presented. For 3 hours, witnesses described human actions that painted them as violent and unpredictable. A trade dispute where humans had threatened economic sanctions instead of accepting a committee's 10-year mediation plan. A border incident where human ships had defended their territory instead of withdrawing and filing proper complaints. Scientific research that pushed beyond safety guidelines established by the Council centuries ago. Each accusation was technically true, but Daeho knew the real story. Humans simply operated differently. When the Kreen Syndicate had tried to cheat human traders, the humans had responded immediately with economic pressure that solved the problem in weeks. When pirates had attacked human colonies, the human fleet had hunted them down instead of filing reports that would take years to process. When human scientists had discovered new technologies, they had tested them quickly instead of spending decades in theoretical review. "The galaxy has enjoyed 10,000 years of peace," the Althari ambassador concluded. "This peace exists because we have learned to resolve differences without violence, to grow without destroying, to exist without threatening others. Humanity refuses to learn these lessons." Dr. So-Young requested permission to speak for the defense. The speaker granted it with obvious reluctance. "Honored Council," she began, her voice steady despite the hostile audience. "You speak of peace, but we have seen your peace. It is the peace of stagnation. For 10,000 years, your civilizations have barely advanced. Your populations remain stable because you limit growth. Your technologies improve slowly because you fear change. The chamber erupted in angry sounds from dozens of different species. The speaker called for silence. So Young continued, "We do not question your right to live as you choose, but you have no right to force us to live the same way. We grow quickly because we can support our growth. We act decisively because problems require solutions, not endless discussion. We explore dangerous technologies because knowledge carefully applied benefits everyone. Your way threatens everything we have built," declared the Vorthak representative. "If other species follow your example, chaos will consume the galaxy. Our way," Admiral Jinwoo said quietly, "has worked for humanity for thousands of years. We have survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would have destroyed species that feared change. We adapt, we overcome, we survive." The voting process took exactly 17 minutes. In galactic terms, this was unseemly haste, but the outcome was never in doubt. 743 species voted to expel humanity from galactic civilization. 104 voted against the motion, mostly young species who had joined the Council in the last few centuries. The speaker read the verdict with formal precision. By overwhelming majority, the Galactic Council declares humanity a destabilizing influence on galactic civilization. All human presence beyond the Sol system must cease within one standard galactic year. Any human vessel detected outside your home system after this deadline will be destroyed without warning. Daeho accepted the verdict with a slight bow. So Young gathered their few belongings. Jinwoo studied the faces around them, memorizing the species that had voted for their expulsion. As they prepared to leave, So Young turned back to address the council one final time. "You judge us by your standards, but you have never understood what makes humans truly dangerous. We thrive when our backs are against the wall." The chamber fell silent as the three humans walked toward the exit. Behind them, representatives from 847 species watched them go. Many felt relief. Some felt pity. A few felt the first stirrings of unease. None of them understood what they had just done. The human delegation boarded their small ship and departed Nexus Prime. As the planet shrank behind them, Daeho activated a coded transmission that would reach Earth in 6 hours. "Prometheus Protocol is authorized," he said simply. "Implementation begins immediately." In hidden bases scattered across the galaxy, men and women who had volunteered for a mission they thought might never come received a simple message. The exile had begun. Now the real work would start. 18 months had passed since the Galactic Council's verdict. The Sol system looked different now, though few outsiders would have noticed the changes. Asteroid mining stations worked around the clock. Shipyards orbited Mars and Jupiter, building vessels unlike anything in the galactic fleet. Earth itself bustled with activity as millions of volunteers prepared for the greatest journey in human history. General Young-Sik Han stood in the command center of Luna Base, watching status reports from across the galaxy. To the Council, humanity appeared to be withdrawing as ordered. Human trade ships had stopped visiting galactic ports. Human diplomats had returned home. Human colonies in known space were being evacuated in full view of galactic observers. What the galaxy didn't see was the Prometheus Protocol in action. "Status report from Kepler Station," announced his aide. "Captain Mi Jinbei. Resource extraction ahead of schedule. They've processed enough rare minerals to supply our shipbuilding program for the next 5 years." Young-Sik nodded. Kepler Station was one of 37 secret human facilities scattered through unexplored space. For decades, human scouts had been finding suitable systems far from galactic trade routes and establishing hidden bases. The galaxy believed humans had only been in space for 50 years. But human deep space exploration had actually begun much earlier, using experimental drives that other species considered too dangerous to test. Engineer Minai Cho entered the command center carrying a tablet displaying ship schematics. At 35, she was the youngest person ever to lead a major spacecraft design project, but her work would determine humanity's future. "The new class is ready for final testing," she reported. "We've incorporated everything we learned from galactic technology, plus our own innovations they were too scared to try." Young-Sik studied the designs. The ships looked nothing like the standardized vessels used by galactic civilization. Where galactic ships were built for committee-approved safety and predictable performance, these human vessels were designed for adaptability and speed. "The Council ships all follow the same basic pattern," Mina explained. "They're built in massive shipyards, take decades to construct, and use technology that hasn't changed in centuries. Our ships are modular. We can reconfigure them for any mission in hours instead of months. What about the new drive systems? Youngsik asked. Mina smiled. That's the best part. The spatial anomalies the galaxy avoids, we figured out how to use them. Captain Sung-ho's team proved the concept last month. Captain Sung-ho Yoon had been leading deep space reconnaissance missions for 3 years. His reports had revealed something that changed everything about humanity's exile. Beyond the galaxy's explored regions lay vast areas of space rich with resources and habitable worlds. The galactic species avoided these regions because of dangerous spatial distortions that made navigation difficult. Human scientists had studied these anomalies and discovered they weren't random disturbances. They were natural quantum tunnels that connected distant parts of space. The distortions that confused galactic navigation systems could be mapped and used for near-instantaneous travel across enormous distances. The test run to the Kepler system took 18 hours, instead of 6 months. Sung-ho reported during his latest briefing. The quantum tunnels work exactly as our physicists predicted. We can move between any of our hidden bases in days instead of years. Admiral Jin-Woo Lee, now coordinating all human space operations, saw the implications immediately. The galaxy thinks they've trapped us in our home system, but we actually have better access to resources than they do. The secret to humanity's advantage lay in their different approach to risk. Galactic civilization had achieved stability by avoiding dangerous technologies in unexplored regions. Over thousands of years, they had mapped safe routes between systems and developed reliable but slow methods of travel and communication. Humans had been studying the same technologies for only decades, but their willingness to experiment with dangerous concepts had led to breakthroughs that galactic science considered impossible. The quantum entanglement communication systems that connected human bases were based on theories that galactic physicists had dismissed as too unstable to use. President Hana Lim, elected to lead the new colonial government, reviewed reports from across human space. The hidden colonies were thriving. Population growth continued at rates that would terrify the galactic species. New technologies were being developed and tested at a pace that made galactic research programs look frozen in time. Our biggest challenge isn't resources or technology, she told her cabinet during their weekly meeting. It's coordination. We're spread across a region larger than the entire galactic core, but we need to act as one unified civilization. Dr. Tae-Won Kim, the brilliant physicist leading the Genesis project, had a solution. The quantum tunnel network doesn't just allow travel, he explained. It can carry information instantly across any distance. We can create a communication system that connects every human settlement in real time. This was revolutionary. The galaxy's fastest communication methods took weeks or months to carry messages between distant systems. Real-time communication across galactic distances would give humanity a coordination advantage no other species possessed. The first major test of human capabilities came when long-range sensors detected galactic exploration fleets approaching the outer regions. The Council had finally noticed the unusual energy signatures from areas they considered empty space. 3 galactic survey fleets, moving toward the Kepler, Vega, and Centauri sectors, reported Captain Sung-ho from his reconnaissance vessel. They're using standard exploration protocols, slow and predictable. General Youngsik made a decision that would reveal humanity's true capabilities. Intercept them before they reach our facilities. Let's show them what humans have been building. The human ships that met the galactic survey fleets were unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They moved faster than should be possible, appeared without warning from empty space, and demonstrated technologies that made galactic experts uncomfortable. When the galactic fleet commander demanded to know what humans were doing in unexplored space, the human response was simple and devastating. This space has been explored, Captain Sung-ho replied calmly. By us. For years. The revelation sent shockwaves through the Galactic Council. The species they had exiled to prevent destabilization had been quietly building something unprecedented. The dangerous humans had used their exile to establish a presence in regions the galaxy had never dared to explore. Intelligence reports began flooding into Council headquarters. Human settlements were detected on dozens of worlds. Human ships were mapping systems at an impossible rate. Most disturbing of all, human population figures suggested they were growing at rates that violated every galactic guideline for sustainable development. The exile that was meant to contain humanity had instead freed them to achieve everything the galaxy feared they might attempt as president. Hana reviewed the latest reports. From their expanding territory, she smiled at the irony. The Council had tried to prevent humans from destabilizing galactic civilization by forcing them to leave. Instead, they had given humanity the opportunity to build something entirely new. The galaxy was about to learn that trying to cage humans had only taught them to break free of cages entirely. In hidden facilities across unexplored space, human engineers worked around the clock building ships, weapons, and technologies that would soon change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. The exile was ending, but humanity's real expansion was just beginning. 5 years had passed since the galaxy had banished humanity from civilized space. What they had intended as punishment had become the greatest opportunity in human history. In the vast region beyond galactic territory, now known as the Dark Frontier, human civilization was growing in ways that would have been impossible under Council oversight. President Hana Lim stood on the observation deck of New Sol Station, the administrative capital of the Human Colonial Federation. Through the massive transparent barriers, she could see dozens of ships arriving and departing every hour. Some carried supplies between colonies. Others brought news from the expanding frontier. Many were exploration vessels heading toward regions no galactic species had ever seen. Population report from the Kepler colonies, announced her aide, Secretary Jae-hyun Park. They've reached 12 million inhabitants across 8 worlds. Growth rate is holding steady at 8% per year. Hana nodded, reviewing the data on her tablet. The numbers would terrify the galactic species, who carefully maintained stable populations that hadn't changed significantly in centuries. But humans needed growth. Their expanding territory required millions of colonists to claim and develop new worlds before other species might eventually venture into these regions. Admiral Kyung-min, Jang entered the observation lounge, his expression mixing satisfaction with concern. As head of the human defense fleet, he understood better than anyone how completely the balance of power had shifted in just 5 years. The new shipyards at Vega 7 are ahead of schedule, he reported. We'll have 50 more heavy cruisers operational within 6 months. Each one is larger and more advanced than anything in the galactic fleet. And the quantum tunnel network? Hana asked. Dr. Taewon Kim, joining their informal meeting, smiled with the satisfaction of a scientist whose impossible theories had become reality. Completely operational across all human territory, we can move ships, supplies, or information between any of our colonies instantly. A message sent from here will reach our most distant settlement in less than a minute. This achievement alone represented a revolutionary advance. The galactic species communicated across their territory, using methods that took weeks or months to carry messages between distant worlds. The quantum tunnel network gave humanity a coordination advantage that made their scattered colonies function like a single, unified nation. The Genesis project has exceeded all expectations, Taewon continued. We've mapped over 300 stable quantum tunnels. The network extends far beyond anything we originally imagined possible. Hana walked to the main display, showing the current extent of human territory. The map would have shocked any galactic observer. In 5 years, humanity had claimed more space than most species controlled after millennia of expansion. Red dots marked human colonies spreading across hundreds of star systems. Blue lines showed the quantum tunnel connections that linked them all together. How many worlds now? She asked. 437 confirmed colonies, replied Admiral Kyung-min. Another 60 under development. We're establishing new settlements faster than we can count them. This rapid expansion was possible only because humans approached colonization differently than galactic species, where the Council required decades of study before approving settlement of a single world. Human colony ships could evaluate and claim suitable planets within weeks. Their modular technology allowed them to establish basic infrastructure quickly, then expand as needed. The heart of human advantages lay in their willingness to take risks that other species avoided. The spatial anomalies that frightened galactic explorers had become humanity's greatest asset. The quantum tunnels allowed instantaneous travel between distant systems, making human territory effectively smaller than the galactic core, despite covering far more space. Captain Sung Ho-yoon had become the leading expert on quantum tunnel navigation. His exploration teams had mapped routes that connected human space in a 3-dimensional web of instant travel paths. Where galactic ships might take months to travel between distant systems, human vessels could make the same journey in hours. The tunnels aren't random, he explained during a briefing with the colonial leadership. They follow patterns we're still learning to understand. Some connect nearby systems. Others link regions separated by thousands of light years. We've found tunnel junctions that work like cosmic highways, connecting dozens of different routes. The military implications were staggering. Human fleets could appear anywhere in their territory without warning. They could concentrate forces from across their empire at any point within hours. Most importantly, they could retreat through the tunnels if facing superior numbers, then return with reinforcements faster than enemies could react. Engineer Mina Cho had used this advantage to design the new generation of human warships. Unlike the massive, slow vessels favored by galactic militaries, human ships were built for speed and adaptability. They could reconfigure their internal systems for different missions, modify their weapon arrangements, and upgrade their technology without returning to shipyards. Galactic ships are like monuments, she explained to a group of naval officers. They're built to last for centuries without changes. Our ships are like living things. They grow and adapt as we learn new techniques. The difference in approach extended to human society itself, where galactic civilizations maintained careful stability through rigid traditions. Human colonies were constantly experimenting with new ideas. Some worlds specialized in scientific research, others focused on manufacturing or agriculture. A few became testing grounds for social and political innovations that would have been impossible under galactic oversight. The success of human expansion had not gone unnoticed by the galaxy. Intelligence reports reaching the Galactic Council painted an increasingly alarming picture. The humans they had exiled to prevent destabilization were building something unprecedented in galactic history. Director Yoonji Seo, head of Human Intelligence Operations, maintained a network of agents throughout galactic space who monitored political and military developments. Her latest report to President Hana revealed growing concern among council members. 3 major species have called for emergency sessions to discuss the human problem, she reported. They're realizing that our exile didn't solve their concerns. It made them much worse. Are they planning military action? Asked Admiral Kyungmin. Not yet, Yoonji replied. But they're starting to understand that we've become more powerful than they intended to allow. Some council members are arguing for preemptive strikes before we become too strong to contain. Hana considered this information carefully. The galaxy had made a critical mistake when they banished humanity, but they might be preparing to make a worse one by trying to fight a war they couldn't win. How do our capabilities compare to the galactic fleet? She asked the admiral. Kyungmin's smile was cold and confident. They have more ships, but our technology is decades ahead of theirs. They have numerical advantage. We have every other advantage that matters. The truth was that humanity had used their exile to achieve everything the galaxy had feared they might attempt if left unchecked. They had expanded rapidly across vast territories. They had developed advanced technologies through dangerous research. They had built military forces designed for quick, decisive action rather than the prolonged, careful conflicts galactic tradition preferred. Most importantly, they had proven that the galactic approach to civilization wasn't the only successful method. Human colonies were thriving under conditions that galactic experts claimed would lead to chaos and collapse. As Hana reviewed the latest reports from across human territory, she realized the galaxy faced a choice they weren't prepared to make. They could accept that humanity had successfully established an independent civilization beyond their control, or they could try to fight a war against an enemy whose capabilities they didn't understand. The first scouts were already reporting increased galactic military activity near the borders of human space. Ships were being moved into position for what looked like preparation for conflict. Hana made a decision that would determine whether the next phase of human galactic relations would be peaceful or violent. She activated the quantum communication system that connected all human colonies and military bases. All colonial and military commanders, she announced, prepare for possible hostile contact with galactic forces. Operation Homecoming is authorized. It's time to remind the galaxy that humans are still here. In shipyards across the dark frontier, human vessels that had been hidden for years began moving toward the borders of galactic space. The exile was about to end, but humanity would return on their own terms. 10 years had passed since humanity's exile from galactic civilization. What the Galactic Council had hoped would be the end of the human problem had instead created something they never imagined possible. The galaxy was about to discover that their greatest fear had already come true. Fleet Admiral Do-hyun Park stood on the bridge of the HSF Indomitable, flagship of humanity's primary battle fleet. Through the viewports, he could see the approaching Galactic Investigation Squadron, 12 ships in the standard Council formation, moving with the predictable caution that marked all galactic military operations. Behind the Indomitable, 37 human vessels waited in perfect formation. To galactic eyes, they would look strange and threatening. Human ships were built for performance rather than committee-approved safety standards. They were larger, faster, and bristling with technologies that made galactic military experts uncomfortable. Incoming transmission from the Galactic Commander, reported Communications Officer Yoo-Jin Lee. Do-hyun nodded. Put them through. The main screen displayed a familiar alien face, Commander Vexthar of the Althari, one of the species most responsible for human exile. His silver features showed the arrogance typical of galactic officers who had never faced real military challenges. Human vessels, Vexthar announced, you are in violation of galactic law by operating outside your designated system. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Do-hyun smiled calmly. Commander Vexthar, you're in human territory now. These systems have been claimed and settled by the Human Colonial Federation for several years. The alien's expression shifted to confusion, then disbelief. Impossible. These regions are unexplored space. No settlements exist here. Your information is outdated, Do-hyun replied. Perhaps you should contact your intelligence services. They'll confirm that human colonies have been operational in this region since shortly after our exile. Director Yoon-ji Seo had spent years building the most effective intelligence network in galactic history. While the Council believed they were monitoring humanity's activities, human agents had been observing every aspect of galactic civilization. They knew more about Council military capabilities, political situations, and economic problems than most Council members themselves. From her command center on the intelligence vessel Shadow of Soul, Yoon-ji watched the confrontation between the two fleets. Her screen showed real-time data from human agents embedded throughout galactic space. The picture they painted would shock any Council member who saw it. Admiral, she transmitted to Do-hyun, our agents report emergency sessions are being called on the Council homeworlds. They're finally understanding what we've built out here. The revelation was spreading through galactic space like a shockwave. Intelligence reports were reaching every major species simultaneously, all carrying the same impossible message. Humanity hadn't simply survived their exile. They had used it to build the largest, most technologically advanced civilization in known space. Chancellor Min-ho Choi, now serving as humanity's chief diplomat, was preparing for the most important negotiation in human history. His team had spent months planning for this moment, when the galaxy would finally confront the new reality of human power. The Council is demanding an emergency session, he reported to President Hana Lim via quantum communication. They want explanations for what they're calling illegal human expansion. Hana's response was transmitted instantly across the dark frontier to every human colony and military base. Tell them we'll attend their session. But this time we're not going as defendants. We're going as equals. The scale of human achievement was becoming clear as galactic scouts explored regions they had ignored for millennia. Human colonies were discovered on worlds that should have taken decades to terraform. Human mining operations were extracting resources from asteroids and systems the galaxy hadn't known existed. Most shocking of all, human population figures suggested they had more citizens than the three largest Council species combined. Admiral Kyung-min Yang coordinated the human response from the Military Command Center on New Busan Station. His screens showed the positions of human fleets throughout their territory. The numbers would terrify any galactic observer. Current fleet strength, he announced during a briefing with the colonial leadership, stands at over 2,000 vessels of cruiser class or larger. Our manufacturing capacity can produce 100 new ships per month. Our population has reached 800 million across all colonies. These figures represented a complete transformation of galactic power balance. The humans who had been exiled as a minor threat had become the dominant force in known space. They had achieved in 10 years what other species required centuries to accomplish. The technology gap was even more significant than the numerical advantages. Human quantum tunnel network allowed instant communication and travel across their entire territory. Human ships could appear anywhere without warning, coordinate perfectly across vast distances, and retreat through space-time itself if necessary. Dr. Tae-Won Kim had continued advancing the Genesis project far beyond its original scope. The quantum tunnels weren't just transportation routes. They had become the foundation for technologies that made human civilization qualitatively different from anything the galaxy had seen. We've learned to manipulate space-time itself, he explained during a demonstration for visiting colonial governors. The tunnels can carry matter, energy, or information instantly across any distance. We can create new tunnels, modify existing ones, and even use them as weapons if necessary. The military applications were staggering. Human weapons could fire through quantum tunnels, striking targets in different star systems without warning. Human shields could deflect attacks into other dimensions. Most importantly, human fleets could coordinate as if they occupied the same space even when scattered across the galaxy. Captain Sung-Ho Yoon had become the leading expert on quantum tunnel warfare. His tactical innovations had transformed human military doctrine from defensive operations to something entirely new. Human forces could fight battles on multiple fronts simultaneously, appearing and disappearing like ghosts that struck from impossible directions. Traditional galactic warfare assumes fleets will approach each other across normal space, he explained to a gathering of military commanders. Our enemies still think in terms of front lines and rear areas. We can attack from any direction at any time from any distance. The political implications were equally revolutionary. The Human Colonial Federation had developed governmental structures that allowed rapid decision-making across hundreds of worlds. Where the Galactic Council required months to reach simple agreements, human leadership could coordinate complex operations in hours. President Ha-Na had created a system that combined democratic representation with military efficiency. Every colony had a voice, but decisions were implemented quickly once made. This gave humanity strategic advantages that rigid galactic bureaucracy couldn't match. As galactic fleets moved toward human territory, intelligence reports confirmed what human leadership had expected. Several major species were forming a military alliance to contain the human threat before it grew beyond control. They're calling it the Galactic Defense Coalition, Yoonji reported. 17 species have committed fleets. They're assembling the largest military force in galactic history. Do-hyun studied the intelligence data showing enemy fleet positions. The numbers were impressive by galactic standards. Nearly 3,000 ships were gathering in the systems bordering human space. It was the kind of overwhelming force that had never been assembled in recorded galactic history. Recommendations? President Ha-Na asked during an emergency leadership meeting. Let them come, Do-hyun replied calmly. They're still thinking like galactic commanders. They expect us to fight like galactic forces. They have no idea what they're actually facing. The final confrontation was approaching rapidly. The galaxy had finally recognized that the humans they had exiled to prevent destabilization had become exactly what they had feared. The question now was whether the galactic species would accept the new reality or try to fight a war they couldn't win. As human fleets took positions throughout their territory, preparing for what might become the largest battle in galactic history, one thing was certain. The galaxy would never again underestimate what humans could accomplish when their backs were against the wall. The exile had ended. The real test was about to begin. 12 years had passed since the Galactic Council banished humanity from civilized space. Now the largest military fleet in galactic history approached human territory with ultimatums and threats. The galaxy was about to learn that some mistakes could never be undone. Grand Admiral Ji-Hoon Shin stood in the command center of the HSF Sovereign, a massive vessel that served as both warship and mobile city. Around him, holographic displays showed the positions of the Galactic Defense Coalition fleet, 3,000 ships from 17 different species, all convinced they could contain the human threat through superior numbers. Enemy fleet has reached the border of the Kepler sector, reported Tactical Officer Soo-jin Kim. They're maintaining standard galactic formation, no signs of advanced tactics or coordination. Ji-Hoon nodded. The galactic commanders were fighting the last war, using strategies designed for conflicts between species with similar capabilities. They had no experience fighting an enemy that could appear anywhere at any time through quantum tunnel networks. "Signal all human fleets," he ordered. "Operation Enlightenment is authorized. Show them what they're really fighting." Across human territory, ships that had been hidden in quantum tunnels began emerging into normal space. Not hundreds, as the galaxy expected, but thousands. The human fleet that materialized around the Galactic Armada was larger, more advanced, and coordinated with precision that made galactic military observers' efforts look clumsy. Empress Yejin Kang watched the confrontation from her flagship, the HSF Unity. At 43, she had been elected to lead humanity through what everyone knew would be the most critical moment in their history. The governmental structure she oversaw had evolved beyond anything the galaxy could understand. "Admiral, open a communication channel to all galactic commanders," she ordered. The transmission reached every ship in the Coalition fleet simultaneously, demonstrating communication technology the galaxy didn't possess. Yejin's image appeared on thousands of screens, showing a confidence that spoke of absolute certainty in her position. "Galactic Defense Coalition," she began, her voice carrying authority that made experienced alien commanders uncomfortable. "You have entered human territory with hostile intent. You have one opportunity to withdraw peacefully. Choose wisely." The Coalition commander, Admiral Kethvar of the Althari, responded with the arrogance typical of galactic military leaders. "Human pretender, you face the combined might of galactic civilization. Surrender now and we may show mercy to your colonies." Yejin smiled, and that smile contained no warmth. "Admiral, you don't understand what you're facing. Let me show you." The demonstration that followed redefined galactic understanding of warfare. Human ships didn't attack directly. Instead, they simply disappeared and reappeared in impossible positions. The careful galactic battle formation became meaningless when enemies could strike from any direction, through quantum tunnels. Within minutes, the Coalition fleet was surrounded, outmaneuvered, and completely helpless. Human weapon systems locked onto every galactic vessel simultaneously. The overwhelming numerical advantage the galaxy had counted on became irrelevant when human forces could coordinate perfectly across impossible distances. But instead of destroying the helpless galactic fleet, the human ships simply waited. The demonstration was complete. The Coalition commanders found themselves staring at weapons that could annihilate them, held by enemies who chose restraint. "You could have destroyed us," Admiral Kethvar transmitted, his voice mixing confusion with grudging respect. "We could," Yejin replied, "but that's not what we want. This was never about conquest. This was about proving that the galaxy can no longer dictate humanity's future." Grand Admiral Ji-hoon coordinated the capture of the Coalition fleet without firing a single shot. Human boarding teams secured the galactic vessels using technology that made resistance impossible. The prisoners were treated with respect that shocked beings who had expected destruction. The real revelation came when galactic officers were brought aboard human vessels. What they found challenged everything they believed about civilization. The human ships weren't just military vessels. They were mobile cities containing families, schools, research laboratories, and manufacturing facilities. Humanity hadn't just built a military. They had built a completely self-sufficient civilization that could exist anywhere in space. Ambassador Hai Wan-Yu had spent years preparing for this moment. As humanity's chief negotiator, she understood that victory in battle was meaningless unless it led to lasting peace. The terms she would present to the galaxy would reshape the political structure of known space. "The Galactic Council will reconvene," she announced to the captured Coalition commanders. "But this time, humanity will participate as equals, not supplicants." The negotiations that followed took place aboard the HSF Unity, surrounded by a human fleet that could destroy any opposition. But the discussions weren't about conquest or revenge. They were about creating a new framework for galactic civilization that acknowledged reality. "The age of council supremacy is over," Haiwan explained to representatives from dozens of species. "Humanity has proven that your way is not the only successful approach to civilization. We offer partnership, not domination, but we will no longer accept subordination." The terms humanity presented were revolutionary but fair. The Galactic Council could continue to exist, but it would operate under new rules. No species could be banished without trial and evidence of actual crimes. Technology sharing would become mandatory for all members. Military conflicts would be resolved through agreed-upon protocols designed for quick resolution, rather than endless committee deliberation. Most importantly, the galaxy would acknowledge that space was vast enough for multiple approaches to civilization. Humanity would govern their territory according to human values, while other species remained free to maintain their traditional ways in their own regions. Dr. Taiwan Kim presented the technical foundation for the new galactic order. The quantum tunnel network that connected human space could be extended to link galactic worlds as well. Instant communication and travel across the entire galaxy would benefit every species, but the technology would remain under human control until trust was established. "We offer to share our advances," he explained to a gathering of galactic scientists, "but cooperation must be genuine. The days of taking human innovations while denying human rights are finished." Captain Sung Ho Yoon had become the architect of the new galactic defense doctrine. Instead of maintaining separate military forces that might fight each other, the reformed galaxy would operate integrated defense fleets, capable of responding to threats with unprecedented coordination. "Human tactical doctrine will become the new galactic standard," he announced during a briefing with former coalition commanders. "Not because we're imposing it, but because it's the most effective approach we've discovered." The transformation of galactic civilization took months to implement, but the framework was established quickly. The new covenant, signed by representatives from hundreds of species, created governmental structures that could actually function efficiently while respecting the rights of all members. President Hana, now serving as humanity's senior representative to the Reformed Council, watched the first session of the new government with satisfaction. Decisions that would have taken years under the old system were being made in days. Problems that had festered for decades were being addressed with human efficiency and galactic wisdom combined. "The galaxy is learning," she observed to her staff. "They're discovering that rapid decision-making doesn't lead to chaos if it's combined with careful planning and genuine cooperation." Engineer Mi-Na Cho supervised the construction of the new galactic infrastructure. Human shipyards were building vessels for dozens of species using hybrid technologies that combined the best of galactic tradition with human innovation. The ships emerging from these facilities were unlike anything the galaxy had seen, but they represented cooperation rather than conquest. The most significant change was cultural. The galactic obsession with stability and risk aversion was gradually giving way to acceptance of controlled innovation and managed growth. Species that had maintained stable populations for millennia began experiencing growth rates that would have terrified them decades earlier. As Empress Ye-Jin stood on the observation deck of the Unity, watching traffic flow through the quantum tunnel network that now connected hundreds of worlds, she reflected on the journey that had brought humanity to this point. The exile that was meant to end human participation in galactic affairs had instead made humans the dominant influence on galactic development. "Your Majesty," reported her aide, "we're receiving requests for colony establishment from 47 different species. They want to learn human settlement techniques for their own expansion programs." Ye-Jin smiled. The galaxy that had once feared human growth was now asking to learn the secrets of human success. The species that had banished humanity for being dangerous were discovering that the real danger had been in trying to suppress human potential rather than finding ways to channel it productively. The transformation was far from complete, but the foundation had been established. The galaxy now operated under principles that valued innovation alongside tradition.